I found my wedding dress in my sister's closet the day before my wedding. The rehearsal dinner ended at 9:30 on a Friday night in June. My fiancé Daniel and I said goodbye to our families in the parking lot of Giuseppe's, the Italian restaurant where we had our first date 3 years earlier. The wedding was scheduled for 2 monks the next afternoon at St. Catherine's Church, followed by a reception at the Riverside Hotel. Everything was planned, confirmed, and paid for. The flowers, the photographer, the DJ, the cake. 140 guests. 6 months of preparation coming together in less than 24 hours. Daniel kissed me goodnight and told me he would see me at the altar. His best man drove him back to the hotel where the groomsmen were staying. My maid of honor, my college roommate Jessica, offered to drive me home. But my sister Maya insisted. She said we should spend the evening together, just the two of us. One last night before I became a married woman. Maya was 28, 2 years younger than me. She lived in an apartment downtown, a renovated loft with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. She worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative, traveling 3 weeks out of every month. We weren't particularly close. Different personalities, different lives. But she was my sister, my only sibling, and she seemed genuinely excited about the wedding. We drove to her apartment in her silver BMW. She talked the whole way about the ceremony, how beautiful the church would look, how handsome Daniel was in his tuxedo at the rehearsal. She asked if I was nervous. I told her I wasn't. I was ready. Daniel and I had been together for 3 years. We talked about everything. We wanted the same things. Marriage felt like the natural next step. Maya smiled and said she was happy for me. Really happy. We arrived at her apartment at 10:15. She poured 2 glasses of wine, and we sat on her leather couch talking about the schedule for the next day. Hair appointments at 9. Makeup at 10:30. Photos starting at noon. She asked about my dress, where it was, if I had picked it up from the alteration shop. I told her yes. It was hanging in my closet at home, the apartment I shared with Daniel. The seamstress had finished the final adjustments on Tuesday. The dress was perfect. Ivory silk with lace sleeves and a chapel train. It cost $20,800, more than I had ever spent on a single item of clothing in my life. Maya nodded and refilled our wine glasses. She asked if I wanted to stay over. She had a guest room. I could sleep there, wake up in the morning, and we could get ready together. It would be fun, like when we were kids. I agreed. It did sound fun. I texted Daniel to let him know. He sent back a heart emoji and told me to get some rest. Maya showed me to the guest room at 11:30. It was a small room with a double bed, a dresser, and a closet. She brought me an extra toothbrush and some pajamas. She said goodnight and closed the door. I changed into the pajamas and brushed my teeth in the guest bathroom. Then I realized I had forgotten my phone charger. My phone was at 23% battery. I would need it fully charged for the next day, for photos and calls and coordination. I opened the bedroom door and walked down the hall toward Maya's room to ask if she had a charger I could borrow. Her door was closed, but I could hear her voice inside, talking on the phone. Her tone was different than it had been all evening. Not warm and sisterly, cold, businesslike. I stopped outside the door, my hand raised to knock. She was saying something about the church, about timing, about making sure everything went exactly as planned. I knocked. The conversation stopped abruptly. A few seconds passed. Then Maya opened the door. She had changed into a silk robe. Her phone was in her hand. I asked if she had a phone charger I could borrow. She said yes, of course, and disappeared into her room for a moment. She came back with a charger and handed it to me. I thanked her and started to walk away. Then she asked if I needed anything else. Water, an extra blanket, anything at all. I told her no, I was fine. I would see her in the morning. She smiled and closed the door. I went back to the guest room and plugged in my phone. Then I lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Something felt wrong. I couldn't identify what exactly. Just a feeling in my chest, a tightness that hadn't been there before. I tried to sleep but couldn't. My mind kept replaying the conversation I had overheard. The tone in Maya's voice. The words about the church and timing and making sure everything went as planned. At 12:45, I got out of bed. I needed water. My mouth was dry from the wine and the nervousness that was building despite my attempts to ignore it. I walked down the hall to the kitchen. The apartment was dark except for a small lamp in the living room. I got a glass from the cabinet and filled it with water from the tap. I drank it slowly. Standing at the sink, looking out the window at the city lights below, that's when I heard it. A door opening. Not Maya's bedroom door, another door. The sound of hangers sliding on a rod. The rustle of fabric. I set down my glass and walked quietly toward the sound. It was coming from the hall closet, the large one near the front door that Maya used for storage. Coats, seasonal items, things she didn't need regular access to. The closet door was open 6 inches. Light spilled out from inside. I pushed the door open wider. Maya was standing inside the closet with her back to me. She was holding something white and flowing. She turned when she heard me, startled. Her face went through several expressions. Surprise, then guilt, then something harder to read. Defiance, maybe. She was holding my wedding dress. Not a dress like mine. My exact dress. Ivory silk with lace sleeves and a chapel train. The small repair on the left shoulder where the seamstress fixed a loose thread. The custom hem that fell exactly 3 inches off the ground to accommodate my height and the heels I would be wearing. My dress. I stared at her. She stared back. I asked what she was doing with my dress. Why was my dress in her closet? She didn't answer immediately. She just stood there holding the dress on its hanger. The garment bag puddled at her feet. Then she said something I didn't understand at first. She said it didn't matter now. It was too late to change anything. I asked what she meant. What was too late? She hung the dress back on the rod, carefully, smoothing the fabric with her hand. Then she turned to face me fully. She said she wasn't going to let me marry Daniel. The words didn't make sense. I asked her to repeat herself. She said it again, slower this time. She wasn't going to let me marry Daniel. She loved him. He loved her. They had been seeing each other for 8 months. 8 months. I stood in the hallway, barefoot in borrowed pajamas, staring at my sister in her silk robe holding my wedding dress. 8 months. While I had been planning a wedding. While Daniel and I were choosing flowers and tasting cakes and writing our vows. While I was trying on dresses and addressing invitations and making seating charts. I asked if she was joking, if this was some kind of strange pre-wedding prank. She said no. She was completely serious. She and Daniel were in love. They tried to fight it, but they couldn't. It just happened. I asked when, how, where. She said it started at Thanksgiving. My parents had hosted dinner at their house. Daniel and I were there. Maya came home from a business trip that afternoon. She and Daniel ended up in the kitchen together, cleaning up while everyone else watched football in the living room. They talked for 2 hours, really talked. She said she had never connected with anyone like that before. They exchanged numbers. Just as friends, she said. They texted occasionally. Then it became more frequent. Then they met for coffee one afternoon when I was at work. Then coffee became lunch. Then lunch became drinks. Then drinks became something else. I asked if Daniel knew she had my dress, if he knew what she was planning. She said yes. He knew everything. They planned it together. The tightness in my chest became something sharper, harder to breathe around. I asked what exactly they had planned. Maya walked out of the closet into the hallway. She looked at me with something like pity. She said they were leaving. Tomorrow, during the wedding. While everyone was at the church waiting for me to walk down the aisle, she and Daniel would be at the airport. They had tickets to Costa Rica, a little beach town where no one would find them. By the time everyone figured out what happened, they would be gone. I asked about the wedding, the guests, the deposits, the plans. She shrugged. She said those things didn't matter. What mattered was that Daniel didn't love me. He loved her. He had been trying to find a way to tell me for months, but he didn't want to hurt me. So they decided this was easier. A clean break. Everyone would understand eventually. I asked why she had my dress. She smiled. Not a kind smile. Something cold. She said she wanted it. She wanted to know what it felt like to wear the dress that was supposed to be mine. To imagine herself walking down the aisle instead of me. Daniel told her everything about it. The details I had shared with him. She called the bridal shop pretending to be me. Said I needed a second dress for the reception. A surprise for my fiancé. She gave them her measurements. They made an exact copy. It arrived 3 days ago. She said she tried it on every night. It fit perfectly. I looked at the dress hanging in the closet. Then I looked at my sister. I asked if she actually thought this plan would work. If she believed people would just understand and accept it. She said she didn't care what people thought. She and Daniel were in love. That was all that mattered. I told her she was delusional. I told her Daniel didn't love her. If he did, he would have ended things with me months ago. Instead, he went through with the engagement, the planning, the rehearsal dinner where he stood in front of our families and friends and pretended everything was perfect. Maya said I didn't understand. Daniel was torn. He didn't want to hurt me. He thought he could go through with the marriage. But the closer the wedding got, the more he realized he couldn't live a lie. I asked if that's what he told her. She said yes. I asked if she believed him. She said yes. I told her she was a fool. Then I went back to the guest room, got my phone and called Daniel. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice thick with sleep. He asked what was wrong. Was I okay? I asked him to tell me the truth. Right now. Was he sleeping with my sister? Long silence. I asked again. He said he didn't know what I was talking about. Was I drunk? Where was this coming from? I told him I was at Maya's apartment. I found my dress in her closet. She told me everything. Another silence, longer this time. Then he said we should talk about this tomorrow, after the wedding. He said we could work through it. I asked if he was planning to show up at the church, or if he was planning to be on a plane to Costa Rica. He didn't answer. I said his silence told me everything I needed to know. He started to say something, but I hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed, still holding my phone. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I thought they should be shaking. I thought I should be crying, but I felt oddly calm, like I was watching this happen to someone else. Maya appeared in the doorway. She asked what Daniel said. I told her he confirmed everything. She nodded. She said she was sorry I had to find out this way. She wanted to tell me after they left. She wanted me to hear it from her, not figure it out on my own. I asked if she understood what she had done. She had stolen my fiancé. She had planned to humiliate me in front of everyone I knew. She had lied to me for 8 months. She said she didn't steal anything. Daniel made his choice. He chose her. I stood up. I told her she could have him. She could have the dress too. She could have the whole fantasy. But she was going to deal with the consequences. She asked what I meant. I told her I was going home. In the morning, I would make some phone calls. Then I would show up at the church at 2, exactly as planned. She looked confused. She asked what I was going to do. I smiled. I told her she would find out. I called an Uber and left her apartment at 1:30 in the morning. The driver didn't ask questions. I sat in the back seat in borrowed pajamas, my phone in my hand, and made a list. First, I called my parents. My father answered, groggy and concerned. I told him I needed to talk to both of them. It was important. Could they meet me at my apartment in 20 minutes? He said yes immediately. Next, I called Jessica. She answered quickly, alert. Maid of honor instincts. She asked what was wrong. I told her I needed her help. Could she come to my apartment right now? She said she was already getting dressed. The Uber dropped me off at 1:50. My parents arrived at 2:05. Jessica pulled up at 2:10. We sat in my living room, the four of us. My mother kept asking what happened. Was I okay? Was Daniel okay? I told them everything. The phone call I overheard. The dress in Maya's closet. The affair. The plan to leave during the wedding. My mother started crying immediately. My father's face went red, then white. Jessica said a word I had never heard her use before. My mother asked if I was sure. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. I showed them the text I had just received from Daniel. Sent at 1:52 while I was in the Uber. It said, "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I hope someday you can understand." My father read it twice. Then he asked what I wanted to do. I told them my plan. At 7 the next morning, I called the church. I spoke to Father Michael, the priest who was supposed to perform the ceremony. I told him there had been a change. The wedding was off. I apologized for the late notice. He was kind. He said he understood. These things happened. He would inform the staff. At 7:30, I called the Riverside Hotel. I spoke to the event coordinator. I told her the wedding was cancelled. She said she was sorry to hear that. She asked about the deposits. I told her to keep them. She said she couldn't do that. The cancellation policy allowed for a 50% refund since I was cancelling with less than 24 hours' notice. I told her I didn't want a refund. I wanted to repurpose the event. She asked what I meant. I told her the reception would still happen. Same time, same place. But it wouldn't be a wedding reception. It would be a party. A celebration of honesty and freedom. The guests would still come. They would still eat the dinner they were expecting. But instead of toasts about love and marriage, there would be an announcement. The coordinator was quiet for a moment. Then she said she would need to confirm with her manager. She called me back at 8:15 and said they could accommodate the change. Same food, same setup, same timeline, just a different purpose. At 9:00, I composed an email. I addressed it to all 140 wedding guests. I attached the invitation list from my planning spreadsheet and copied every address. The subject line said, "Important update regarding today's wedding." The message was brief. I wrote that the wedding ceremony at St. Catherine's Church was cancelled. However, the reception at the Riverside Hotel would still take place at 5 as scheduled. I hoped everyone could still attend. There would be an important announcement. I apologized for any confusion and thanked everyone for their understanding. I sent it at 9:07. By 9:30, my phone was ringing constantly. Friends, relatives, co-workers, everyone asking what happened. Was I okay? What was going on? I didn't answer any of the calls. I sent the same text message to everyone. Please come to the reception. All will be explained. At 10, Maya called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 10:15, 10:30, 10:45. Each time, I declined the call. Daniel called at 11 Ra. I answered this time. He asked what I was doing. What was the email about? I told him I cancelled the wedding, but I was still having the reception. All of our guests were invited. He asked why. What was the point? I told him the point was that 140 people had taken time out of their lives to celebrate what they thought was my marriage. They deserved to know the truth about why the marriage wasn't happening. They deserved to know what kind of man I almost married and what kind of sister I had. He said I was being crazy. I was making this worse. I told him he should probably not come to the reception unless he wanted to be there when I told everyone what he and Maya had been doing for the last 8 months. He hung up. At 11:30, my mother helped me get ready. Not in a wedding dress. In a black cocktail dress I already owned. Simple, elegant, appropriate for a party, but not a wedding. Jessica did my hair and makeup. Not bridal style, just normal, everyday beauty. At 2 Hawan, the time I was supposed to be getting married, I was sitting in my living room with my parents and Jessica, drinking coffee and going over my notes for the evening. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. It said, "You don't have to do this. We can talk. Please." I didn't respond. Another text. "I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, but this won't change anything. Daniel and I are still leaving." I typed back, "Have a nice flight. I'll see you at the reception." She wrote, "I'm not coming." I replied, "You should. It's going to be educational." At 4:30, my father drove me to the Riverside Hotel. The parking lot was full. People were arriving, confused but curious. I saw aunts and uncles, cousins, college friends, co-workers. Daniel's family was there. His parents, his brother, his grandmother. I walked into the reception hall at 4:55. The room looked exactly as I had planned it. Round tables with white linens, centerpieces of roses and hydrangeas, uplighting in soft blue. The head table set for 2, where Daniel and I were supposed to sit as husband and wife. I walked to that table alone and sat down. At 5, the coordinator announced that dinner would be served. Guests looked at each other uncertainly, but took their seats. The meal was the one I had chosen 6 months ago. Caesar salad, filet mignon, roasted vegetables, wedding cake for dessert. People ate quietly, talking in low voices. I could feel the questions hovering over every table. Where was Daniel? Why wasn't there a ceremony? What was happening? At 6:30, after dinner was cleared and the cake was served, I stood up. I walked to the microphone that was set up for toasts. The room went silent. I thanked everyone for coming. I said I knew they were confused. I said I was sorry for the last-minute changes and the cancelled ceremony. Then I explained why there was no wedding. I told them about Maya and Daniel, the affair that started at Thanksgiving, the 8 months of lies, the plan to leave during the wedding, to abandon me at the altar while they flew to Costa Rica. I told them about finding my dress in Maya's closet, about the phone call to Daniel at 1 in the morning, about the text message that said he was sorry, but he never meant to hurt me. I told them I was grateful. Grateful I found out before I legally tied myself to a man who could lie to my face for 8 months. Grateful I learned what kind of person my sister was before I trusted her with anything important ever again. I said this reception was my way of taking back control, of refusing to be humiliated, of choosing honesty over pretense. I thanked them again for coming, for caring about me enough to show up even when things got complicated. Then I sat down. The room was absolutely silent for maybe 5 seconds. Then my father stood up. He walked to my table and hugged me. My mother joined him, then Jessica. Then one by one, other people started standing. Friends, relatives, co-workers. They formed a line. Each person came to my table, hugged me or shook my hand, and said something kind. Daniel's parents left without speaking to anyone. The reception continued. The DJ played music. People danced. The bar stayed open. It turned into a real party. Not the awkward disaster I had half expected. At 8:00 I got a text from Maya. It said, "I'm at the airport. We're boarding in 20 minutes. I hope you're happy." "You ruined everything." I texted back. "I didn't ruin anything. You did. Have a nice life." At 9:30, as the reception was winding down, a man I didn't recognize approached me. He was about 35, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt. He introduced himself as Marcus Chen, a friend of Jessica's from law school. He said he couldn't help but overhear the situation. He wanted me to know that if I needed any legal assistance, particularly regarding the wedding expenses or any financial damages, he would be happy to help. I thanked him and took his card. 2 days later, I called Marcus Chen. We met at his office downtown, a small space on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse. I brought my planning binder, the one with all the contracts and receipts and confirmation emails. I showed him everything. The deposit for the church, $800. The reception venue, $12,000. The photographer, $3,500. The florist, $2,200. The DJ, $1,800. The cake, $950. The invitations, the favors, the decorations. The total came to $31,470. Marcus reviewed every document carefully. Then he asked, who paid for what? I told him I paid for everything, every single expense. Daniel contributed nothing. He said he would pay me back after the wedding when we combined our finances. I believed him. Marcus asked if I had anything in writing about Daniel's promise to repay me. I showed him text messages, dozens of them over 6 months. Daniel acknowledging the costs, saying he would pay me back, promising we would split everything once we were married. Marcus said that might be enough. It established an agreement, even if it wasn't a formal contract. He could file a civil suit against Daniel for breach of promise and fraud. There was legal precedent. Not a guarantee, but a possibility. I asked about Maya. Marcus said that was trickier. She didn't promise to marry me. She didn't enter into any financial agreement with me. But if I could prove she intentionally interfered with my relationship for financial gain or with malicious intent, there might be a case for alienation of affection. I told him to file both suits, Daniel and Maya. I wanted them to face consequences. He said he would draw up the paperwork. 3 weeks later, Daniel and Maya were served, both of them. Daniel was served at his office, where he had returned after his week in Costa Rica. Maya was served at her apartment, where she was staying while she looked for a new job. She had been fired from her pharmaceutical sales position. Something about extended unauthorized leave and misrepresenting her whereabouts to supervisors. Daniel called me when he got the papers. He said I was being ridiculous. He said I was bitter and vindictive. He said no judge would award me anything. I told him we would see. Maya didn't call. She sent a long email instead. She said she never meant to hurt me. She said love was complicated. She said she and Daniel were trying to make it work, but things were hard. She said she hoped someday I could forgive her. I didn't respond. The case took 8 months. Marcus worked steadily, gathering evidence, filing motions, preparing arguments. Daniel hired a lawyer who tried to argue that there was no enforceable agreement about the wedding expenses. Marcus countered with the text messages, emails, and witness testimony from my parents and Jessica about Daniel's promises. Maya's lawyer tried to argue that she had no legal obligation to me. Marcus argued that she intentionally and maliciously interfered with my relationship, causing me emotional distress and financial harm. We went to court in February. The judge was a woman in her late 50s, with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. She reviewed all the evidence, the planning documents, the text messages, the timeline of the affair, the testimony from witnesses. Then she delivered her ruling. She ordered Daniel to repay me $3,170 for the wedding expenses. She said the text messages established a clear agreement to share costs. His breach of that agreement, combined with his fraud in continuing the engagement while conducting an affair, made him liable for the full amount. She ordered Maya to pay me $10,000 in damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress. She said Maya's actions, specifically continuing a relationship with my fiancé while helping me plan my wedding, demonstrated malicious intent and a reckless disregard for my well-being. Total judgment, 41,470. Daniel's face was white when we left the courtroom. Maya wasn't there. Her lawyer said she was out of town on business. Marcus set up a payment plan. Daniel and Maya had 60 days to pay in full, or the judgment would accrue interest at 8% annually. Failure to pay would result in wage garnishment. Daniel paid his portion in 45 days. 3 payments of $10,490. The money appeared in my account like clockwork. Maya took longer. She made the first payment of $5,000 after 55 days. The second payment came 4 months later. She sent the final payment 8 months after the judgment. By the time I received the last check, I had already moved on in every way that mattered. I sold the apartment I had shared with Daniel. Too many memories. None of them good anymore. I bought a small house on the east side of the city. A craftsman-style bungalow with a front porch and a garden. I adopted a dog from the shelter, a golden retriever mix named Charlie, who slept at the foot of my bed and greeted me at the door every evening. My business continued to grow. I promoted 2 employees and hired 3 more. We moved to a larger office space. Revenue increased 40%. I went on dates occasionally. Some good, some forgettable. I wasn't in a hurry to get serious with anyone. I was learning how to trust again. It took time. I didn't speak to Maya for 2 years. She tried to reach out several times. Birthday texts, holiday messages, an email on the anniversary of our grandmother's death. I never responded. Daniel, I heard through mutual friends, broke up with Maya 4 months after Costa Rica. Apparently, the reality of their relationship didn't match the fantasy. He moved to Seattle for a new job. Last I heard, he was engaged again. I hoped his new fiancé knew what she was getting into. Maya eventually moved to Chicago. New job, new city, new start. My mother gave me updates occasionally, hoping I would soften. I didn't. Then 3 years after the wedding that never happened, my mother got sick. Cancer. Stage 3. The prognosis was serious but not hopeless. She needed surgery and chemotherapy. She needed family around her. Maya came home. I saw her at the hospital the day after my mother's surgery. She was in the waiting room with my father. She looked older, thinner. Her hair was shorter. She stood up when she saw me. She said my name. I nodded and walked past her to my mother's room. For 2 weeks, we existed in the same space without speaking. We took turns sitting with my mother. We coordinated schedules through my father. We were polite, distant, careful. Then one evening, my mother asked to see both of us together. She was in her hospital bed, weak from the chemotherapy but alert. She told us to sit down. She said she was tired of the silence, tired of the division. She understood why I was angry. She understood what Maya did was wrong. But she was our mother, and she didn't want to spend whatever time she had left watching her daughters pretend the other didn't exist. She asked if we could try to talk, really talk, not for her sake, but for our own. I looked at Maya. She looked at me. I said I would try. We met at a coffee shop the next afternoon, a neutral place, not connected to any memories. We sat at a corner table with our cups. Neither of us drank. Maya spoke first. She said she was sorry, not the empty sorry from her emails. A real apology. She said she made terrible choices. She justified them by calling it love. But it was really selfishness. She destroyed something precious because she wanted what I had. Not Daniel specifically, but the idea of him, the wedding, the attention, the fantasy of being chosen. She said therapy helped her understand that. 2 years of it, twice a week. She had work to do. She was doing it. She didn't expect forgiveness. She just wanted me to know that she understood the depth of what she had done. I listened. Then I told her the truth. I said I didn't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What she did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Hundreds of choices over 8 months. Every time she texted Daniel, every time they met in secret, every time she smiled at me and asked about wedding plans while sleeping with my fiancé. But I also said I was willing to try to move forward. Not to forget, but to coexist, for my mother's sake, and maybe, eventually, for our own. Maya nodded. She said that was more than she deserved. We didn't become close. We didn't have sister talks or share secrets. But we learned to be in the same room without tension. We coordinated my mother's care. We showed up for family dinners. We were civil. My mother recovered. The surgery was successful. The chemotherapy worked. 6 months later, she was declared cancer-free. At the celebration dinner my father organized, Maya and I sat across from each other. We made small talk. We laughed at my father's jokes. We helped clean up afterward. As we were leaving, Maya stopped me in the driveway. She said thank you for trying, for showing up, for not giving up on family completely, even when she gave me every reason to. I told her I didn't do it for her. I did it for my mother and for myself, because carrying that much anger was exhausting. She nodded. She understood. That was 4 years ago. Today, Maya and I have what could be called a relationship. We're not close. We probably never will be. But we're cordial. We attend family events. We exchange pleasantries. We've found a way to exist in each other's lives without causing damage. I never got my wedding, but I got something else. I got clarity about who people really are when they think no one is watching. I got strength from standing up in front of 140 people and telling the truth when lying would have been easier. I got justice through the legal system and the satisfaction of knowing that actions have consequences. And I got my life back, the one I was supposed to have, not the one built on someone else's lies. People sometimes ask if I wish I had never found the dress, if ignorance would have been easier. I tell them no. Finding that dress in my sister's closet the day before my wedding was the best thing that ever happened to me. It saved me from a marriage that was a lie. And it taught me that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best freedoms.